Today I want to start with a spoof of an ad. Not a real ad, but an ad for an F-150. Even if you don't need it for work, just get one to burn extra fuel. Just get one to consume more resources. To make you feel like you're in touch with nature. To make you feel like you are a working man, even if you're actually going to a job as a bookkeeper. Get the F-150, get this big truck just to have a bigger vehicle to create more risk of serious injury and harm to pedestrians, bicyclists, and those in smaller vehicles. And best of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, the citizens of America, for helping pay for these ads and helping pay for our lobby efforts to make sure that large consumptive vehicles are the norm. So this spoof of an ad, and this video is inspired by a few factors here. One, did you know that I heard that Job from Arrested Development, or the character, the actor who plays Job on Arrested Development, actually does the voiceover for big truck ads? Two, you might have heard that Ford announced they're going to build a electric F-150 and that Joe Biden was riding around in it. And some people might feel a little cynical about that. I want to tell you why they might feel cynical, but why I still think it's a good move. Next, a really tragic headline about a dad who recently backed over his own son backing out of a driveway in his F-150. Killed him. And that's one of those moments where we all wish we could have a do-over. You know, it's so recent in time if you could just go back and do something a little differently. And next, another headline is that there's a headline in Canada that someone, I believe it was a young man, used his pickup truck, and I don't know that it was an F-150, but he used his pickup truck, and what authorities believe he did it intentionally to run over a family who turned out to be Muslim, and they think it was a hate crime. And it left only a 9-year-old boy out of that family surviving and in critical condition. Now that kid won't have parents. So let's take a look at the desire for people to have these large vehicles, whether they need them for work or not. And also I'll get back to the work necessity of trucks as well. Okay, so I'm not dismissing if somebody needs a truck for a livelihood. So first, let's just look at sheer amount of material used. So a larger vehicle by its nature is going to consume more energy to get from A to B, and it's going to consume more materials in its construction to get those people or that passenger from A to B. Now, all along the supply chain to make that vehicle and power that vehicle are what's called externalized costs, meaning, well, you drill oil to make the synthetic products for the truck, that maybe the plastic dashboard, or you drill oil to power the truck. There's all sorts of externalized costs pushed on the public, from the greenhouse gases heating the planet to carcinogens and other kind of toxins affecting our bodies. The running of that truck on internal combustion engines, like the running of any vehicle, is going to put out particulate matters and, again, carcinogens that affect our bodies as well as greenhouse gases. The size, the girth, the weight also make these vehicles more dangerous in collisions, more deadly to pedestrians, more deadly to bicyclists, and more deadly to those in smaller vehicles. And here, ironically, stylistically, we often see really big vehicles with crash bars on them, when actually it's the smaller vehicles that need those crash bars. Speed. We have a general rushing around culture. Now, in my opinion, this rushing is largely for no real great reason from a societal standpoint. It's kind of, to quote Devo, a race of doom. Are the resultant deaths worth it? And notably, it was President Ronald Reagan who let the speed limits go up again, whereas Carter had lowered them to save fuel and create safer road conditions. Lack of good regulations in general. Well, Republicans often campaign on deregulating, portraying them as a burden to society. And there's some reason why people would be rubbed wrong by regulations. But I think from a small business owner's point of view, cooperating with regulators really isn't that onerous. It's really that once you get those reports and that from the regulators, there's a paper trail being created, putting that business owner at risk of lawsuit. So I really feel litigation, the wild card of litigation, is really more of the problem for small business owners than are sensible regulations that could be argued about. For instance, with that truck, they're so high, the visibility is really becoming hampered. Is that really a good idea? Are there regulations going to make the truck, have better visibility? Now, since I mentioned Republicans generally being the ones to oppose regulation more so than Democrats, why would the public who has no gain from that sign up for it? Well, this is where I get into what Mark Twain called, patriotism. In this case, we're talking about false patriotism being the last refuge of the scoundrel. It gets you all riled up about a foreign adversary. Get you all riled up about some outnumbered group of people. That's the troublemakers. Take your eyes off of what this system is doing to us. And Democrats are involved in this too as well. Don't get me wrong. But as I pointed out, they're more responsive to environmental organizations. So that young man, I believe he was a young man who allegedly murdered those people with his truck in Canada. I'd imagine he's probably been pumped full of what I call these false patriotic arguments. And now he's got these associations with a truck as this like patriot's vehicle. It's a marketing ploy. So this gets us to the manipulation. How free of choice do we really have? And I think if people admit to themselves their free choice is really more limited, then they're less easily manipulated. So one example, just forgetting about media and lobbying and all that, is just fear. You got other people on the road with big vehicles, and you're thinking, well, if that big vehicle crashes into me, I'm less safe. I better get a bigger vehicle as well. So now there's an arms race on the road. The fact some people are using vehicles as a murder weapon pushes people into vehicles, creating more pollution, more consumption. The ads often associate the truck with what people are missing. They're missing wilderness. They're missing farming. They're missing these connections to nature and a natural lifestyle. And they're manipulating that by associating the truck that you or the consumer really may not be using for any of those purposes with what the truck is helping destroy and take away by polluting our environment. So one of the reasons why these big trucks were able to get so massive over the recent years is because lobbying efforts created set-asides or carve-outs for vehicles that are supposed to be being used for work purposes. So they don't have to meet those same fuel efficiency standards. But the problem is, in many cases, they're not being used for work purposes. This is a subsidized effort. And over my lifetime, there's been 2 major auto bailouts. And my understanding that both cases, the auto industry got into trouble because they came at a time when the public really didn't want large vehicles. They wanted gas sippers, the earlier bailout, which was in the 80s. So they took the money, they paid for ads, they paid for lobbying, and they pushed through until they got the public ready and eager for large vehicles again. Now that's where some of the cynicism comes in. Yeah, it's good Ford is making an electric vehicle because you're going to get cleaner air quality. Electric vehicles can be charged by renewable energy. And according to studies I've read from the Department of Energy, they consume less energy regardless of the power source. But where the cynicism comes in is the same industries that have been bailed out, that lobbied against fuel efficiency standards and so on, are now just going to take over the EV market. When there was smaller competitors waiting in the wing trying to get their day, and now they're looking less likely to succeed. Well, what about the work exception? The older pickups were lower and really easier to manage. If you're actually sincerely, working out of your truck, now depending on the kind of work you're doing, okay, if you're using it to haul materials around, it's a little different. If you really need that horsepower for hauling things, it's a little different. But if you're going to a job site and you're going to do some kind of maintenance on that property, you now have this much larger vehicle to climb in and out of. So the older pickups were actually better. The smaller ones were actually better in that regard, purely for work purposes. Now, another way people are so easily manipulated and tricked by the ads and that kind of thing is because really, I think people are kind of lost, And part of it's because they're not donating to environmental groups, they're not reading the environmentalist literature. But also, here I'll come down a little bit more. I get it, like traditionalists, religiously traditional people, they're not thinking of themselves as environmentalists, but they could. Look at the Amish, the Mennonites, that's a really low impact society. I was having a debate with somebody, and I was debating in favor of like Amish and Mennonites, and he was making fun of them, and he was pointing out that what he was trying to claim was hypocrisy at some Mennonite family who had the horse and buggy for their general transportation around the neighborhood, but then had the F-150 for doing, hauling stuff around on the farm. But see, that's a work exception, because I would imagine that men in a community, they're viewing having a big truck for show is somehow ungodly. It's somehow really materialistic. So however you want to look at it, my concern is that the public, a lot of people are really getting lost in their own sense of self, and they're more easily manipulated. So I hope you found these concepts helpful in your own thinking about what kind of world you want to live in. And if you did, please remember to subscribe to my channel, click that notification bell, comment, like, share the videos, help build up this channel. And until next time, peace be with you.